why don't we start over again?
Oh, take two.
Yes, take two. Go ahead.
My name's Jerry Tighe, and I live at 614 Mohawk Street, Watertown, New York.
And when did you enter the U.S. Navy?
I went in 30th of October 1972.
And you served until
February 1st of 96.
And you were in the subservice, right?
That's correct.
And your highest rank was?
I was a senior chief quartermaster.
And tell us a little bit about some of the subs you served on.
I started on, leftover World War II boats. USS Trumpetfish was my first one. And then later went to USS Tiru after Trumpetfish was sold to the Turkish government. Tiru was later sold to the Brazilian government. I left Tiru, was decommissioning crew. From there I went to, I wanted to go to the West Coast to go to another diesel boat, but because I was living at the time when I enlisted in Pulaski, somebody in Washington thought it'd be really nice if I went to the Pulaski, or Pulaski as they call it. So I did, which was an FBM, Fleet Ballistic Missile Submarine. I did 4 runs on her, 4 deterrent patrols. I left her, I went to teach at sub school on a MAG team, Military Assistance Group, where we were teaching diesel submarining to the Iranian Navy at the time. That sort of went by the wayside when the political climate changed in Iran.
When the Ayatollah took over?
When the Ayatollah took over, yes. The Shah was abdicated. Then I went right to teaching celestial navigation to both juniors or enlisted and officers at sub school, finishing out my tour. From there I went to the USS Archerfish, did a 3-year stint on her, went to USS Pargo, did a stint on her, went to the Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi did 3 or 4 years on her. She was getting ready to go to the yards. I'm not a shore duty person, so I went back to the Archerfish, who had just came out of the yards. Did another 2 years on Archerfish. I went to Augusta. These are all fast attack submarines. After Augusta, on Augusta, I broke my ankle. So sort of then back to shore duty, was being sent to shore duty for a time. I was lucky enough that an old friend of mine, Master Chief, was working at the base in Groton, and he took me over for an interview with a captain. I went to tugboats, harbor tugs, as a trainee. I got my tugmaster pin. Then also did 3 years on the tugs, but part of that was I became a river pilot also, a harbor pilot.
Where was that?
New London in Thames River.
Let's back up just for a sec to, you went in 72 during the Vietnam era.
Correct.
What was your motivation for going in the Navy? In Pulaski, there's not a lot of deep water.
No, but we have the lake.
We do, that's true. Just down the street.
No, I got a letter from a nice president saying that maybe I ought to go to the Chimes building in Syracuse and talk to the Army. That's basically how I got them. I didn't plan to make it a career. I decided I'm going to go in for 2 or 3 years, do my time, get out. And I was just out of college. I didn't really know I was working as an insurance adjuster. wasn't my type of job, and I found a niche.
What did you study in college?
I was a geology major. I know it has nothing to do with deep blue water, but
Hey, so when you went into the service in '72, what was did it seem like the public perception was of the military at the time?
I think, well, again, the political climate was very volatile at the time. We had the race riots, we had the anti-war riots, and it was, in Pulaski though, that didn't happen. I mean, the military was still regarded with esteem, where in some parts of the country it wasn't.
Did you ever experience any of that?
No, because being on submarines, you really are isolated even from the rest of the Navy. You're in a different Navy, basically, even though it is the Navy.
Now, during that period, it was in '72 when you first went into the attack subs. What was the role of the subs at the time, that you were doing?
We were, even though they were leftovers, it's the same role as they had until just recently, and that was to learn how our potential enemies worked, what their tactics were. Basically, a submarine, even though all the war movies show them blowing up tankers and troop ships, a submarine is really, its main enemy is another submarine. So we started, when I was there, we started in '72, and when I got out in '96, even though the role was beginning to change, it basically for that span of 24 years, it did not, and that's what we concentrated on.
So you guys were focusing on the Soviet Navy at the time?
Yes. Basically, that was the one, but.
And their allies.
And their allies.
And surrogates.
Yeah. It was an interesting period.
Now so a lot of your role at the time was to track these subs and figure out what their capabilities were, what their routine was, what their missions,
That's correct. That was basically, and we would be stationed at various spots, and for say they were just launching a new type, and we would try to get all the information, both landline, I mean, you could actually, the ESM, they would be able to pick up any type of communications. So we'd hover off the coast and listen, watch, wait, and participate in their war games, even though we weren't part of the players.
and stay invisible.
That's correct. Submerged and undetected, as they used to say.
How successful,
We were very successful during that period. I personally, with all those subs and one more, we would leave home base, and once we got underway, we weren't working for Submarine Force Atlantic anymore. We worked directly for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and they are the ones that disseminated the information as they saw fit.
Now, how would you know when you were detected?
Just by their responses,
What would their response be?
Their response would be to come chase it. The ones I was on were lucky. I mean, some boats didn't. We actually had boats that have had submerged collisions with Soviet submarines. So
They would ram another sub to try to,
not on purpose. It was just that,
because you were invisible.
yeah, you got run over basically.
Because you were saying that, sometimes you'd be in the midst of their war games, monitoring it. When they would detect an American sub, what would their response be to?
They'd bring in the anti-sub, hunters, their frigates or their destroyers, and it'd ping you right. Probably try to ping you right to death.
When you say ping you, what do you mean by that?
Sonar, actively using active sonar to track you and determine where you are. There were times when we were told to back off by JCS. During that time, I remember one of them was the meeting, and I believe it was Iceland between Reagan and I don't know if it was Gorbachev, but there was a political meeting. We were told to do not do anything that would jeopardize those talks, more or less. And if we can all remember back to Gary Powers, God rest his soul, he got shot down over where he wasn't supposed to be or where they thought he shouldn't be, and it became an international incident. We didn't want that to happen.
Now, during the, you were in the service, you joined under the Nixon era during the, as we, sort of at the peak of the Vietnam era, then as after
Carter and then Reagan.
So during those Carter years, some were pushing for a peace dividend, they called it, and they were, the investment into the military was not really taken. Did you notice any?
Oh yeah, those were lean years for the force, and not only us, but for all the military. Being stationed out in New London at the time, I remember the Coast Guard took a huge hit. The Coast Guard Academy's right across the river from the sub base partner. But everybody, it was, you felt it. Equipment wasn't being changed out. We were using way past its, lifespan should have been. Reusing stuff that technology wasn't available then. When Reagan took office, of course, the 600 ship goal for the Navy, things picked up.
Reagan made some, pay increases. The morale seemed to pick up a lot for
huge. People, I think, felt better about themselves being in the military, and he did help us monetarily. I can remember sub pay when the Nixon Carter years was $55 a month. It immediately jumped started at 55, but your length at sea or sea service counted, and I went from 55 up to $206 or $7. That was a heck of a pay raise.
that had to help a little bit.
Yeah, that was I was like, wow.
During the, and Sarah, feel free to chime in. During those Carter years, when a lot of people felt like there was a hollow force, when the Iranians, when the Ayatollah seized the hostages, and there was that sort of feeling of a national embarrassment at first, until they started burning flags, and then a lot of the anti-war protesters were like, well, we get to burn American flags, but will be damned if,
Somebody else
is going to be doing these. And there was a real sea change in the American attitude toward, or what was your experience? I mean, you were probably out on a boat, so you probably didn't see it.
We got, I think when we talked earlier about when we were teaching the Iranians, we were actually going to build them a sub base in the Straits of Hormuz at Bandar Abbas, and we were just months from going over there until that incident happened. Right after that incident, or during the time frame that they were held, of course we lost 8 Marines, died during a rescue attempt.
The attempted rescue.
Boats, and everybody says, weren't you on a ship? Well, submarine is referred to submarines as boats.
Yep.
So if I use boats, I don't mean that.
Right.
We got sent there. Well, I thought I was never going to see Bandar Abbas, but I did through a periscope. So
now during that the attempt, the rescue mission attempt. I mean, when everything seemed to go wrong, what was the reaction within the military to,
damn, just damn. We lost good people trying to do what they were trained to.
But the equipment didn't work.
The accidents happen. I don't think we were trained, and this is a guess. People said sand and got into the jet engines of the helicopters, ate up the blades. One of the reasons. Now we're flying helicopters in Afghanistan. We did it in Iraq. We did it in Iran. So again, you learn from the mistake and you fix whatever needs to be fixed.
Now what was the mood of the military after that incident? As there seemed to be a general attitude of never again. Are we going to be put in that position?
I think that's probably pretty close. It became, I don't know how to say it. It bound everybody even closer together. That now we were, up until 9/11, we didn't have to really worry about, because it happened someplace else, even though we were losing lives. But we lost lives in Somalia. We lost them all over the world. I mean, Grenada was another incident. Panama. So, and I think for a military person, whether it's another sub-sailor, a sailor, Marine, Airman, Coastie, somebody gets hurt or killed, he's still part of the family.
Mm-hmm. And but after, I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, after the hostage taking, I think there was a sea change in the American attitude toward the military. That, where, there had been that general disrespect, during the Vietnam era, and, people tolerated, shameful behavior after the Iranian crisis. Then a lot of people who, wouldn't fly a flag, wouldn't, stand up, suddenly they were like, what are we doing?
Right, I agree. It brought the country closer together. It brought their conscience level up to, hey, these guys do work for a living.
Did you feel any of that?
No, because I probably already.
Well, I know
I was a hawk already to begin with.
I'm saying, in terms of your dealings with civilians when you were on shore, did you notice a change in their, a recognition of the?
Well, again, I got to go back to where I was stationed at that time, and of the 24 years I spent, 19 of them it was 1819, out of New London, or out of the New London area, Groton, Connecticut. Groton, I remember when I first arrived there, you come in, there's a billboard, huge, welcome to the whole United States submarine force. The whole, in the economy, electric boat was just down the shoreline. They were building them. Sonalist, which were working on equipment, sonar equipment, navigation equipment was across the river. United Nuclear was there. So that town depended on not only the Navy, but production of submarines and associated equipment. So you didn't see, they were already in the mix. So, and you either were in port for a short time in London or at sea. So interacting with, say, a business person from Boston, I can't use Boston because, again, that's another Navy town. East Coast is loaded with Newport, Norfolk, New Hampshire, Charleston at one time, Key West, my first duty station, lovely place. And of course, the West Coast has San Diego, all the way up to Bangor, Washington. If you're around a military town, I don't think you see or perceive what the rest of the country is doing, because you're interacting with either military personnel or people who are associated making a living through the military personnel, whether it's the local barber, the guy that sells you shoes, or the guy that's making equipment for the military. You don't see that away, unless you're away from there.
Because at one point they were even encouraging service personnel not to wear their uniforms when they were traveling.
That's correct.
Stateside.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of hard to believe today, but
yeah, it was.
A lot of people had.
And then when we would be overseas, if we would do a port visit, and again, we're going back to the Iranian hostage crisis. I remember in the old days, working for a chief, he goes, "Come on, we're going on Liberty. I'll meet you topside in a half an hour." So I go down, put jeans on, a shirt, and go topside. We're in Fort Lauderdale. He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, we're going on Liberty." He said, "Not like that. You go down and put your whites on." And of course, this is before we went around. After the Iranian hostage crisis, we weren't allowed to wear a uniform in a foreign port. You were told to bring civilian clothes. Do not be flashing your ID card. We went from, you used to be able to travel all through Europe to show your ID card. We went from that to getting passports. So just a regular passport. They didn't want you being identified with the military.
As a security concern.
That's correct, for your own good.
Now, when did you make the move from diesel to nuke subs?
After the first 4 years. Tiru at that time was the last diesel boat on the East Coast. We put her out of commission with quite a bit of fanfare down in Charleston. It wasn't later, when we were, some years later, we brought 3 boats around from the West Coast. The force brought 3 boats around. Tang, Wahoo, and Trout, which were developed post-Korea. The last 3 just before we made the shift into going to nuclear power with Nautilus, Skipjack, and that group. They came around, they were being sold to the Iranians. We used them as training boats. We always kept 2 into London, and the time frame was if you use 2 for school boats. 1 could be was down in Philly, being new batteries, updating the equipment. They brought Wahoo up after she did her overhaul, and we sent Tang down to do an overhaul. So we kept Wahoo and Trout in London, and then Tang came out, Trout went in the yards. Then the thing.
What was the biggest difference between the diesel and the nuke subs?
Oh, water. On diesel boat, fresh water is at a premium. The diesel engines and it are 524 cells on a diesel boat. Each cell, like if you open the car battery and you see, put the water in, well, each cell weighs a ton though, so there's 524. It takes a lot of water. So we would make fresh water from seawater, but the crew, it wasn't for taking showers or anything. So on the nuke boat, they made so much water, they didn't even run the equipment half the time. They would just, the technology was much better.
So you could take a shower once in a while.
Took twice a day. Go on watch, take a shower, come off watch, take a shower.
How long would you have to go between showers on the diesels?
I remember my first large run, long run, 3-month deployment on a diesel. And I asked that question to the chief. He says, bring 3 sets of clothes. Clothes you're going to go out in. Halfway, you throw those out, you put a new set on. I said, what's the 3rd set for? He says, the day you come in port, you throw the 2nd set out, and you look clean when you get off the boat. So the shower would be, we would pull up, and those of us, that time I wasn't married at the time, we would grab a cab back to the barracks. You didn't have anything to bring other than what you had with you. We'd stop at the PX, get a couple cases of beer and some ice, grab a garbage can, fill the ice in there, throw the beer in it. And of course, gang showers in the barracks, so you had we'd all take folding chairs, sit there, drink beer, and let the water run on us for an hour till you turned into a prune.
At least you get clean.
Yeah.
Now, sub duty is long days.
Yeah, but you're busy all the time, but you gotta remember it's only the day is 24 hours long. You get into the routine, your day's only 18 hours long because you're on watch for 6 hours. You got 12 hours to work on equipment, prepare charts, do weather observation, and get some sleep and get something to eat. So your day is, say you start with the mid-watch, you come on at 23:30 at night on a Monday night. You have watch till supposedly mid to 6 in the morning, but you get relieved a half an hour early or 15 minutes early. Go get breakfast, go to the rack. Then you don't come back on watch till 6 at night or 1800 and then get off. So your day starts with a watch, and then how you end it depends. Go watch a movie if you want to, but there's that was usually in the evening. The worst part with having the mid-watch was that you knew that you were working. So if it was 24-hour day, you're going to work 12 hours that day and have 12 off. Well, the 12 off isn't always guaranteed because you were drilling, practicing casualty control, go to battle stations, and you'd be in the rack 10 minutes or sleep 10 minutes, and bong, 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 and you're up fighting a fire or flooding or whatever, or battle stations. So it filled the day up real quick.
Hey, you were telling me earlier about one of your duties was to wash the showers.
Yeah, this is, I think we're going back to Senior Chief Coffee, who was chief of the boat at the Tiru, and teaching some hard-headed lessons. Like I said, so the old diesel boats, water was at a premium, as we just talked about. So after watch, the helmsman, plainsman, or the watchstanders or the lookouts got to clean. I mean, everybody getting off watch, their watch had a chance to, didn't get a chance to clean. They cleaned. So every 4 hours, the boat was cleaned. My particular one was to make sure the showers were cleaned, or the shower. So while one guy was cleaning the sinks, I would be cleaning the shower.
Now, space was at a premium in a sub.
Yeah, storage was really, So what was stored in the shower was wet garbage, because the dry garbage, they bundle up. So wet garbage, So you'd open the shower door, take all the wet garbage out, scrub the shower down, make it nice and shiny. Now the showers are all stainless steel. You go get the outgoing chief of the watch, he inspected it, make sure it was clean. Then you put all the wet garbage back in the shower and wait for another 4 hours. Somebody gonna come along and clean it and do it again.
So they're really clean showers that
Clean showers
that were seldom used.
that were used, yeah, very seldom used. Yeah, I mean, stuff was, potatoes were stored in the overhead, yeah. So the old boats, it was, and it's not much different on the new boats. I mean, it is. But if you get ready for a long, now you gotta understand, a submarine now is a self-contained city. We have cooks, make our own
How
air.
many crew?
Usually if on a fast boat, anywhere between 112, 120. That included the officers. So the only thing that keeps you from staying at sea forever is food. So when we load out down, you're going to make a long run. Number 10 cans. There's a lot of things comes in anywhere from lard to coffee to you name it, flour. They all cardboard gets put down on the decks in the living spaces. Now they get stacked with number 10 cans and other like cardboard and more. So as I always said, you ate yourself to walking upright, because passageways were just about 6 foot, I don't know, 6'2", so you always walked around like this. Well, when you got number 10 cans that are stacked up and they're 2 foot off the deck, now you're hunched over walking, and it felt better is that you ate yourself down back to the deck and you could stand up. But that's the only, I mean, basically new boats, great. You got water, you got clean air. Go a lot faster. But the equipment, even though they've got larger, we've become so technically advanced that more equipment takes up space. You were talking how many people? 120. You only have racks, though, for sleeping for 94 of those people. And it's, the XO's got his stateroom, the COs, the officers, they have their own staterooms. Now it's down to the poor junior enlisted guy, the chief's at the chief's quarters, who's going to sleep like we slept on the old boats, sleeping with a torpedo, put your arm around the torpedo, or sleeping wherever you can find a spot. It might be to grab a mattress and pull it into a closet or a storage space, but then the cook's going to wake you up because he's got to get flour out of the storage space. So, and we have what we call hot racking, which when I was chief of the boat, you have 2 bunks for 3 guys. 1 guy's on watch, one's getting off, going to bed, and the other one's in bed. So they would rotate the racks every time they would go to one of the other, whichever one was open. And they'd just bring clean sheets with them, put them on, and they'd sleep there until they came up to pecking order, made rate, and then they got their own rack.
Now, what were your experiences with officers? A lot of times, sometimes the newly minted officers don't always understand the value of the non-commissioned officer force.
There's a couple good stories on that one. On the whole, excellent. I had the CO one time, and the enlisted referred to Annapolis grads as ring knockers. And they'll actually sit in order by order of precedence when they graduated from, or what, where their standing was. The higher up, the closer you sat to the captain and the XO.
Based on their grades?
Based on their grades,
on their year?
On their year, what year they graduated. So it's pretty class system orientated. We would get, if we got one just out of sub school, or an ensign, but most of them on the nuke boats, they would go to sub school and then go to nuclear power school, or nuclear power, then sub school, depending on which way. So they sort of had their stuff together, but I had a captain one time who was not a ring knocker, CO, and he calls me up to his stateroom, and he goes, "Why do we have all ring knockers?" "I don't know, Captain, or your officers." He goes, "God." And he graduated from Notre Dame, a big Notre Dame, even though I went to Iowa to college, I was a Notre Dame fan. So we hit it off there, but on the average, the young officers were told, I don't know if they're told or they're quick on the pickup, just because you're an officer, you're not running the Navy. The old adage was the chiefs run the Navy. Mm-hmm. And so the best officers are the ones that would come up to you and ask questions. The trainable, we'll call them the trainable ones. There are others. But on the average, subforces, I know it's completely different than the surface force. Subforces is, I forget the name of the movie, but that's exactly what the movie is, Band of Brothers. You start wearing dolphins, either silver or gold, designated between officer and enlisted. You're part of that brotherhood, and that's a very, very, very close brotherhood.
I mean, the confined quarters, has always been my understanding, within the subservice, makes for a less formalized relationship than in a lot of other parts of the Navy.
That's correct. I mean, everybody is usually on the old boats. You go back to diesel boats. From the captain on down, everybody's on a first name basis or nicknames. Except for Senior Chief Coffee, he was always Senior Chief. He was the real old Navy, and he'd always call you by your last name. He would not use first names. He wouldn't even call the captain skipper. He'd address him as whatever his rank was. But those days, but still, now the new nuclear Navy, it's good morning or good afternoon, Captain, XO. You call the engineer Eng, navigator Nav, the head commissary pork chop. It's a lot less formal than the surface Navy. Excuse me, and that, when we go back to the Band of Brothers, everybody understands one principle in submarine. If something goes wrong, and you're there, you better know how to fix it now. There's no time delay. And it doesn't matter if you're walking past a burst pipe with your junior enlisted or you're the captain. Everybody understands it. Everybody else is watching out for your hind end. It's the way the game is played, and that's how it is.
Especially in such confined quarters in subs, some people just emotionally aren't suited for that. Did you ever run across?
Okay, in 24 years, I have never seen a fight. I've seen arguments. I've never seen a fight. Mostly it's, I think as I wrote down, it's either you're in the barrel, somebody's shooting at you, or you're shooting at the barrel. So joking was part of the whole tradition. So I've never saw anybody lose it, let's say lose it, in the 24 years, and on many different boats and ships. No, it's, I don't know. Well, I remember I went when I was applying to go to sub school. I was at Newport at the time, stationed Newport, going to A school, and it was Friday afternoon, and they said, okay, everybody's going, those who volunteered have to go over to the psych. So you go over to the psychologist. And my name's starting with a T. He went in alphabetical order. Okay. And people were going in the door, out the door, in 5 minutes at the most. I go in there and they're 2.5 hours. I'm going, well, the first question he asked me, he goes, what do you think are closets? And I said, nice place to hang clothes. And I was fielding his problems for the next 2 hours because he had more problems than anybody else. It was funny.
Our next appointments here. What biggest lesson did you take away from your career in the Navy?
Boy, biggest lesson. Probably humility. Really. You are not, how can I put this? You're not what you seem to be, what your ego thinks you are. It's what the people you work with and around make you and think of you. So, yeah, I would say the biggest lesson was humility. You can get all the awards and medals you want. Those, they don't mean, they're personal awards, but you wouldn't have got any of that accolade if it wasn't for the other 119 that are with you. Or if you go back to the old boats, 45 of us. And you are part of a team. There's no, like they say, there's no I in team.
Well, Jerry, thank you very much for